Popular British car maker is choosing to pause imports into the United States in the wake of President Trump's tariffs on overseas trading. Bailey Tucker is live right now at an auto dealership in Charleston. Bailey, what are dealers saying as they wait to really learn what happens next?
Something's happening across the car industry that nobody wants to admit. 5 major brands, names you see every day, are running out of time. Dealers are whispering about canceled orders, empty lots, and executives vanishing without warning. Owners are already watching resale values slip, but the real story is what's coming next. These aren't niche companies, they're household names. One bad quarter away from a freefall that could change everything you think you know about the car market. Stay tuned. Brand number 1 will shock you. Number 5. Jaguar. Let's start with what might be the most spectacular act of corporate self-destruction we've seen in modern automotive history. Jaguar didn't just stumble. They didn't just make a bad quarter. They looked at their heritage, their customer base, and their entire reason for existing, and they set it all on fire in a bizarre rebranding campaign that will be studied in business schools as a cautionary tale for decades. Here's what happened. In late 2024, Jaguar announced they were going all electric and completely reinventing their brand identity. Fine, plenty of luxury brands are making that transition. But then they released a promotional campaign that featured exactly 0 cars, alienated their entire existing customer base, and introduced a visual identity that looked like it was designed by a committee that had never seen a Jaguar before. The reaction wasn't just negative, it was apocalyptic. Social media erupted. Longtime Jaguar owners felt betrayed, and potential new customers had absolutely no idea what they were looking at or why they should care. But here's where it gets truly catastrophic. Jaguar stopped selling most of their current lineup in preparation for this rebrand. Dealerships across America and Europe are sitting there with empty showrooms, burning through overhead costs with nothing to sell. They've essentially gone dark for an entire year, maybe longer, betting everything on a lineup of electric vehicles that won't arrive until late 2025 at the earliest. And in that time, their competitors have been feasting on their former customers like vultures on a carcass. Think about the financial implications for just a second. Jaguar's parent company, Tata Motors, has been subsidizing the brand for years. Sales were already anemic. In 2023, Jaguar sold fewer than 65,000 vehicles globally. For context, BMW sold over 2 million. Jaguar was already on life support, and instead of playing it safe with a gradual transition, they chose to go all in on the riskiest possible rebrand at the worst possible time. Electric vehicle sales growth has slowed dramatically. The luxury EV market is more competitive than ever, with established players like Tesla, Mercedes, and BMW. And Jaguar decided this was the moment to alienate everyone who ever loved the brand and chase after customers who don't even know Jaguar exists. Dealers are furious, and some have already started dropping the franchise. When you're paying rent and salaries with 0 inventory to move, the math stops working real fast. And here's the thing nobody's talking about. What happens to your existing Jaguar's value when the brand potentially ceases to exist? Who's going to service your F-Type in 2030 when Jaguar is just a memory? Parts availability? Forget about it. You'll be searching junkyards and international suppliers just to keep your luxury sports car running. This isn't just a marketing failure or a temporary misstep. It's an existential crisis playing out in real time, and Jaguar is running out of runway faster than anyone wants to admit. The brand that once represented British elegance and racing pedigree has become a case study in how to destroy decades of equity in a matter of months. Tata Motors is patient, but even their patience has limits. If these new EVs don't land with the force of a cultural revolution when they finally arrive, Jaguar won't get a third chance. The countdown to extinction has already begun, and every month of empty showrooms brings them closer to the point of no return. For current owners, the advice is simple. Enjoy your vehicle now, because its value and supportability are evaporating with each passing quarter. The brand confusion at Jaguar at least has a parent company with deep pockets willing to gamble on a turnaround. Our next entry isn't so lucky and is staring down a merger just to survive. You're already ahead of most buyers just by watching this far. Tap subscribe and stay in the loop. Real data, leaked memos, and pricing moves that dealers don't talk about. Protect your next purchase before it costs you. Number 4. Nissan. If you've been paying attention to automotive news at all in the past 6 months, you've watched Nissan transform from a major global player into a company openly discussing merger talks because they can't survive on their own anymore. Let me repeat that. Nissan, one of the largest automakers in the world, the company that sells the Leaf electric vehicle and the legendary GTR, is now so financially desperate that they're in talks to be absorbed by Honda just to stay alive. How did this happen? How does a company with that much volume and that much history end up here? The answer is a toxic combination combination of terrible decision-making, quality collapse, and getting absolutely demolished in the Chinese market. Let's start with China because that's where this really hurts. Nissan's sales in China have fallen off a cliff. We're talking about a 40% drop in recent years. China is the world's largest automotive market, and Nissan is getting obliterated by domestic EV makers who build better vehicles for less money. BYD, NIO, Li Auto, and Xpeng are eating Nissan's lunch with more advanced technology, better infotainment systems, and prices that Nissan can't touch. That alone would cripple most companies, but Nissan has problems everywhere you look. In North America, Nissan's reputation has been circling the drain for years, thanks to their aggressive subprime lending strategy. They were the king of selling cars to people with terrible credit, and while that juiced their sales numbers short-term, it created a used car market flooded with beat-up Nissans that nobody wants. Resale values cratered. Brand perception tanked so hard it's practically 6 feet under, and now, even people with good credit won't touch a Nissan because they don't want to be associated with a brand that became synonymous with bad financial decisions and questionable life choices. The stigma is real, and it's killing them. Then there's the quality issues that have plagued Nissan for over a decade now. Nissan's CVT transmissions have been an unmitigated disaster. Class action lawsuits, premature failures at 60,000 miles or less, customers left stranded with repair bills that exceed the car's remaining value. Their 9-speed transmissions in trucks, also problematic with shifting issues and reliability concerns. When your reputation becomes the brand that will leave you on the side of the road, people stop buying your products. It's that brutally simple. Brand loyalty only goes so far when you're worried about being stranded on the highway with your family in the car. But here's where it gets really scary from a financial perspective. In November 2024, Nissan announced they were cutting 9,000 jobs and reducing production capacity by 20% globally. That's not a restructuring or a minor adjustment. That's a company fighting for survival with its back against the wall. Their operating profit collapsed by 90% year over year. They're burning through cash reserves at an alarming rate. And the proposed Honda merger? Honda's executives have been extremely lukewarm about it in public statements because they know they'd be inheriting Nissan's massive problems, toxic brand reputation, and mountains of debt along with any potential benefits, like shared platforms or economies of scale. Think about what this means for you if you own a Nissan right now. If this merger happens, you're looking at a complete restructuring of the dealer network. Redundant dealerships will close. Parts availability could become a nightmare during the transition. And if the merger doesn't happen, Nissan might not make it another 2 years as an independent company. Your warranty could become worthless paper if Nissan files for bankruptcy protection. Your trade-in value? Already in the basement and still digging deeper every quarter. This is a company in genuine distress, and the clock is ticking louder with every earnings call. Nissan bet big on internal combustion while the world moved toward electrification. They bet on China and lost spectacularly. They bet on subprime customers and destroyed their brand. Now they're out of chips and looking for someone to bail them out. For Nissan owners, the writing is on the wall. Get out now while you still can, or prepare for a very uncertain future. Yet even Nissan's problems look manageable compared to the institutional chaos and dealer revolt engulfing our number 3 brand. Number 3, Stellantis. This is where things get truly ugly, because Stellantis isn't just one struggling brand. It's a collection of 14 brands, many of them iconic American and European nameplates, all trapped inside a corporate structure that's imploding in real time. If you own a Jeep, a Ram, a Dodge, a Chrysler, an Alfa Romeo, a Maserati, a Peugeot, or any of the other brands under the Stellantis umbrella, you need to pay very close attention to what's happening right now. In late 2024, Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares abruptly resigned under pressure, not retired gracefully. Resigned, the board essentially pushed him out after a catastrophic year that saw dealer relations collapse, inventory pile up on lots to unprecedented levels, and sales crater across multiple brands in key markets. Tavares had been running Stellantis like a private equity firm, squeezing every penny of short-term profit while alienating dealers and customers alike. He raised prices to absurd levels that the market couldn't bear. He cut back on incentives even as competitors were offering massive discounts. He starved dealers of inventory on hot models while flooding them with inventory on dogs that nobody wanted, and he genuinely seemed to believe that brand loyalty would carry them through any storm. He was spectacularly wrong, and his resignation proved it. American Stellantis dealers launched an unprecedented revolt that made national headlines. They took out full-page ads in the Detroit Free Press and other major newspapers demanding immediate change. They organized in ways that dealers almost never do. They went public with their complaints in a way that violates every unwritten rule of the franchise franchise system. Dealers were sitting on 90 to 100 days of inventory when the industry standard is 60 days maximum. They couldn't move vehicles because prices were too high, and consumers had figured out that Stellantis products, particularly Jeep and Dodge, had become reliability nightmares that would drain their bank accounts. Let's talk about Jeep specifically, because this brand destruction is genuinely painful to watch. Jeep used to be bulletproof from a brand perspective. People didn't just buy Jeeps, they loved Jeeps. They joined Jeep clubs and went on trail rides. They waved at other Jeep owners with genuine enthusiasm, and Stellantis managed to damage that cult-like loyalty in less than 5 years. How? By letting quality slide dramatically while jacking up prices to luxury levels. A base Wrangler now costs over $40,000. A Grand Cherokee can easily push $70,000 with options. And for that money, you're getting a vehicle with electrical gremlins, transmission issues, engine problems, and build quality that makes you wonder if anyone's actually inspecting these things before they leave the factory. Consumer Reports ranks Jeep near the bottom in reliability. J.D. Power studies showed Jeep owners experiencing more problems than almost any other brand. This is a disaster. Ram trucks have similar problems eroding their reputation. The new Hurricane inline-six engine that replaced the legendary Hemi, the jury's still out on long-term reliability, and early reports from owners and mechanics are not encouraging. There are reports of lifter failures, oil consumption issues, and other problems that should not be happening on trucks that cost $60,000 or more. Stellantis was so focused on meeting emissions regulations and cutting manufacturing costs that they forgot the most important rule in this business. Your product has to work reliably or people stop buying. Meanwhile, brands like Maserati and Alfa Romeo are essentially on death watch, with barely any sales to speak of. Maserati sales are so low, they barely register in monthly reports. Alfa Romeo's American comeback has been a complete failure despite gorgeous styling and enthusiastic reviews. Chrysler is down to one model, the Pacifica minivan. Dodge is discontinuing the Charger and Challenger muscle cars and replacing them with electric vehicles that traditional Dodge customers don't want. The entire corporate structure is in chaos, and with Tavares gone, there's no clear plan or vision for how to fix any of this mess. Here's what keeps me up at night about Stellantis. They have too many brands, too much debt, too little consumer confidence, and no coherent strategy. If they start shutting down brands or selling them off piecemeal to raise cash, what happens to parts and service for those orphaned brands? What happens to your Jeep's value if Jeep becomes a zombie brand that's technically still alive but barely supported? This isn't theoretical. This is happening right now, and Stellantis is running out of time to figure it out before the whole house of cards collapses. But at least Stellantis is primarily struggling with management decisions and strategy. Our number 2 brand is facing something far more existential that threatens an entire nation's economy. Number 2, Volkswagen. For decades, Volkswagen was more than just a car company. It was a symbol of German engineering excellence, economic stability, and industrial might, the largest automaker in Europe by volume. A company so powerful and central to German identity that it had its own city. Wolfsburg exists because Volkswagen exists. The city was literally built around the factory, and right now, for the first time in its 87-year history, Volkswagen is preparing to close factories in Germany and lay off tens of thousands of workers. Let that sink in for a moment. This isn't an expansion plan gone wrong or a temporary adjustment. This is an industrial pillar of Europe cracking at its foundation, and the implications extend far beyond the automotive sector. The numbers are absolutely staggering and almost hard to believe. Volkswagen is planning to close at least 3 factories in Germany. 3 entire factories. They're talking about laying off tens of thousands of employees in a country where such moves are almost unheard of. They've already ended their job security agreement that guaranteed employment until 2029. The unions are furious and threatening strikes that could shut down production entirely across multiple facilities. And management is openly saying in press conferences that Volkswagen's cost structure makes them fundamentally uncompetitive in the global market. This is unprecedented in modern German history. How did this happen to a company that was once considered untouchable? The answer is a perfect storm of strategic failures, massive regulatory pressure, and getting absolutely demolished in China. Let's start with China, because that's where the pain is most acute. Volkswagen used to dominate the Chinese market completely. China was their profit engine that funded everything else. In 2023, Volkswagen still sold over 3 million vehicles in China. But Chinese consumers have moved on rapidly. They're buying electric vehicles from BYD, NIO, Li Auto, XPeng, and other domestic brands that are better, cheaper, more technologically advanced, and more in tune with what Chinese buyers actually want. Volkswagen's market share in China has collapsed by double digits, and that represents billions upon billions in lost revenue and profit. Then there's the Dieselgate scandal that continues to haunt them like a ghost that won't disappear. The emissions emissions cheating scandal broke in 2015, and Volkswagen is still paying for it financially and reputationally. They've paid over $30 billion in fines, settlements, and remediation costs. Their reputation took a nuclear hit that they've never recovered from, and they were forced to pivot to electric vehicles faster than they were ready for. Which brings us to the next major problem. Volkswagen's electric vehicle strategy is a complete mess, despite billions in investment. They invested astronomical sums into the MEB platform that underpins their ID series of electric vehicles, the ID.4 crossover, the ID Buzz van, all of it. And the vehicles are fine. Not great, not class-leading, just fine. But they're expensive to build, they're not price competitive with Tesla or Chinese EVs, and software issues have plagued the launches and damaged initial reviews. Volkswagen is stuck in no man's land, too expensive to compete with Chinese brands, not premium enough to compete with Mercedes or BMW or Audi, and lacking the brand cachet in electric vehicles that Tesla has built over the past decade. Back in Germany, the cost structure is completely unsustainable in the modern global market. German labor is expensive compared to other manufacturing hubs. Energy costs in Europe have skyrocketed following geopolitical disruptions, and Volkswagen negotiated union contracts decades ago that made perfect sense when they were printing money, but are now strangling their ability to compete. They're paying workers substantially more than competitors pay in other countries, and they're getting less productivity in return due to rigid work rules. Here's why this matters to you even if you don't own a Volkswagen. If Volkswagen goes down or has to drastically restructure through bankruptcy, it creates a domino effect across the entire European automotive supply base. Hundreds of suppliers go bankrupt. Tens of thousands of additional jobs disappear. Entire regional economies that depend on automotive manufacturing get devastated. And for Volkswagen owners, parts availability becomes highly questionable. Resale values drop precipitously, and the confidence that your vehicle will be supported long-term evaporates overnight. Volkswagen is fighting for survival in a way that would have been absolutely unthinkable just 5 years ago. They're not just restructuring or right-sizing. They're trying to figure out if they can remain a major independent player at all, or if they'll be broken up and sold off piece by piece. This is the end of an era, and it's happening in slow motion right in front of us while the world watches. And yet, even with all that chaos, even with German factories closing and unions threatening nationwide strikes, none of it compares to the absolute disaster unfolding at our number one brand. Number 1. Ford. Here it is, the brand that put America on wheels and defined automotive freedom for generations. The company that built the Model T, the Mustang, the F-Series trucks that have been America's best-selling vehicle for 47 consecutive years. Ford Motor Company is in the deepest financial crisis of any major automaker right now, and the scary part is how few people outside the industry realize how bad it's gotten. Let's start with the number that should absolutely terrify anyone who cares about Ford's future. They lost $5.5 billion on electric vehicles in 2024 alone. $5.5 billion. That's not an investment that will pay off later. That's a hemorrhage of cash that threatens the entire company. And they're projecting similar or worse losses in 2025 because nothing has fundamentally changed in their EV strategy. Ford bet everything on electric vehicles, built multiple massive new factories, invested tens of billions into battery technology and dedicated platforms, and the market simply didn't show up in the volumes they projected. The F-150 Lightning was supposed to be a game changer that would dominate the electric truck market. It's been a sales disappointment with production cuts and massive inventory buildups. The Mustang Mach-E is fine and competitive, but it's not moving volume anywhere near what Ford needs to justify the investment. And now Ford is stuck with massive EV infrastructure operating way below capacity while bleeding cash every single quarter with no end in sight. But the EV losses are just the beginning of Ford's problems. Ford's quality has fallen off a cliff in recent years, according to multiple independent studies. They ranked near the bottom in J.D. Power's most recent initial quality study, below even brands known for having issues. Customers are reporting problems with everything from infotainment systems that freeze and crash to transmissions that shudder and fail to electrical issues that leave vehicles stranded. The Ford Explorer, which should be a home run in the SUV crazy American market, has been plagued with reliability complaints and negative reviews. The Bronco, which generated absolutely massive hype at launch with waiting lists over 2 years long, has had quality control issues that damaged its reputation among the enthusiast community. When people are waiting 2 years for a new Bronco and then it shows up with paint defects, electrical problems, or roof issues, that's not just a quality problem. That's a fundamental brand trust problem that spreads through social media like wildfire. Then there's the truly frightening debt situation. Ford is carrying over $130 billion in total liabilities on their balance sheet. Their debt-to-equity ratio is alarmingly high compared to competitors. They're paying massive interest expenses every single quarter just to service that mountain of debt, and with interest rates higher than they've been in decades, those payments are crippling. Unlike some competitors who can weather these storms because they have stronger balance sheets and cash reserves, Ford is operating with very little margin for error. One major recall, one economic downturn, one market shift they don't anticipate, and Ford could be in genuine trouble. Now let's talk about what's really keeping Ford executives awake at 3 in the morning. Their truck business is under siege for the first time in decades. The F-Series has been their profit engine for generations. Trucks subsidize everything else Ford does, but Ram has been gaining significant market share with better interiors and technology. Chevrolet's Silverado is highly competitive on price and capability, and new premium entries like the Rivian R1T and Tesla Cybertruck are eating into the truck market from the high end where Ford makes their fattest margins. If Ford loses significant market share in trucks, they're done. That's their profit center. That's what funds all the car development and EV investments and global operations, and for the first time in decades, that dominance feels genuinely vulnerable. Ford's response to all this has been chaotic and unfocused. They've reorganized the company multiple times in the last 3 years, creating confusion and inefficiency. They split their EV and gas operations into separate divisions called Ford Model E and Ford Blue. They've had multiple rounds of layoffs affecting thousands of workers. They've cut back on vehicle programs and delayed launches, and through it all, they've continued to burn billions on EVs that consumers aren't buying in the volumes Ford desperately needs to break even. Here's what makes Ford's situation more dangerous than anyone else on this list. They don't have a parent company to bail them out. If things go truly sideways, Stellantis can potentially sell off brands or get acquired by a larger player. Nissan is actively looking at a Honda merger. Jaguar is part of Tata Motors. Volkswagen has the implicit backing of the German government if things get desperate enough. Ford, they're completely on their own. The Ford family still controls the company through special voting shares, which means they can't easily be taken over or restructured by outside forces. They have to fix this themselves, and right now, there's no clear path forward that doesn't involve years of losses. If you own a Ford, especially a newer one loaded with technology, you need to be thinking seriously about what happens if Ford has to drastically cut costs or even potentially file for bankruptcy protection. It's not impossible. It's happened before in this industry. GM and Chrysler both went bankrupt in 2009, and Ford's current situation is in some ways more precarious than what either of those companies faced. Your warranty might be worth less than the paper it's printed on if Ford can't honor its financial commitments. Your vehicle's resale value could crater overnight if Ford's financial situation becomes public knowledge in a way that creates panic in the used car market. And parts availability 5 or 10 years from now becomes a huge question mark if Ford has to shut down factories, exit certain segments, or dramatically scale back operations. The Blue Oval is in trouble, and it's time people started paying attention. 5 brands, 5 warnings. Some will bounce back, others won't. Before you make your next move, check our latest breakdown on where prices fall next. Subscribe now, and I will see you on the next one.